So by this point, we've created a metaverse with a flat plane, and we have these figures that are moving around. We've been able to create all that, but how can a user move left, right, up, or down? That is, how can the user move around in the space we've created? Well, we need to create that, and the way we're going to do that is I'm going to do it manually in this case. But 3 actually has built-in functionality that actually enables it to do it automatically in a lot easier way. In fact, in the advanced sections of this course, I'll show you how easy it is using 3. However, for this project, I'm going to show you how to do this manually, and you understand exactly how this is all done. Let's go back to our source code. So we go into Visual Studio, and what we're going to have to do now is we're going to be creating a new file that's actually going to handle the management of the movements. That is, how do we move? We're going to put it in a separate file. And the way we'll do that is we will go back to the folder src, and we're going to create a new file. That file in there is going to be called movements.js. Okay? This is where we're going to put all of our movement. So to get started, we're actually going to be establishing a class that will enable us to move around, okay? So whenever we click on a key, for example, A, or we click on B, or we click on C, each of those keys has actually a representing number. It's called a key code. That key code matches the key in your keyboard. So when you click on A, you have a specific key code for that. So we're going to create a very simple class. So this class is going to be called key movements. And what we're going to do is we're going to be creating and reference those specific key code numbers that represent those keys in the keyboard. So it's actually a very easy way. We're going to create a constructor, and that constructor is actually going to enable us to establish which key represents going up, going down, left, or right. So it's going to be called this.movements, and we will establish what are the movements that the user will be doing by clicking on the keys. And we're going to have two simple codes, but I'm going to leave that for a little bit later in the lesson. So at this moment, let me just leave here a reminder to do it, and I will continue with this lesson. So at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to identify what happens when someone clicks on a specific key. That is, how do you move up? How do you move down? How do you move left, right? Well, we're going to create a function, and we're going to call it isPressed, because it will work when actually somebody clicks on a value and if we generate a key code from someone clicking on a specific key. You see? So if that value is brought back, let's say someone clicks on a specific key, if we get that code, we're going to return this movement. Wait, let me change this from this movements. Let's change it to this movement. Okay, so this movement, and what we're going to do is we're going to pass the key code value. That key code is because of depending on which key the person presses. Now we're going to use a logic function. To do that, we're actually going to use JavaScript. And I've provided a link for the documentation for JavaScript in the resources, which will take you to this specific page. Now, this is not going to be directly 3JS, but we'll be able to use this function here. We're going to use a conditional ternary operator. We'll use this conditional operator, which will let us choose either this or that, depending on what the user passes as a parameter. So let's put here this function. In case we get a parameter, what we're going to do is if we receive this movement, right, the key code that we got, or if it's not that, then what we would actually get is false. So it's either this movement based on what the key was pressed, or we will get false. That's the function if someone presses on that button. Now what we're going to do is we're going to be putting different functions. We're going to go up and we go down. Let me add the code right now. We will get started with down, and I'm going to add a value to it. I'm going to pass this value of E, and this value is going to let us identify the code that we're going to need for that. So let's put a condition for it. We're going to put an if this movement, and then we establish this E key code, return, and then I'll explain to you exactly why I'm doing all this because it's going to make a lot more sense once you see this. Let me start with E. If person clicks on E, this movement E key code, so this movement E key code equals true. So the person actually clicked on the E, the user clicks on E. What this says, if the user has clicked on E, which is down, which is going to move the camera down, we're passing the value E, which equals down. We're going to do the following. So right now we're generating this logical value. The logical value is E, which is true. So we're setting a conditional value. Now we're going to go on and do the actual movement. So now that we've gotten an E, let's go into, we're actually going to first notify exactly what's going to happen. So we're going to set a console log that says exactly what's going on. So he say here, key down, and we will actually then say key down. We will then pass a key. So you go E dot key, which is the parameter we're passing. So right now I need to say E dot key. That's the value we're passing down, right? And then what's the key code for this? Well, we're going to go here as we're going to define key code. And then we say that key code is going to be E dot key code. So by this point, notice we've got the E key, which gives us the letter E, because that's the value we pass to E. The key code tells us the key code corresponding to that letter. And so by this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the same thing, but actually moving up. By now we set up down. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this and I'm going to modify this to up. Okay. And then this first portion, the return, would actually not apply. We're not needing it anymore. We've already established it. Now, this movement, instead of actually being E, it's going to be false because we're actually moving up, right? You're not going to be actually clicking E. You actually be moving up. Okay. By this point, I'm going to change it. It's actually key down is going to be replaced for a key up. And then I need to establish right now, we can just leave it the same way that it is, okay? So let's go back to the top. I said that we were going to be creating this constructor. I said I hadn't done it. At this point, we're going to be generating these events. Let me explain to you how I do this. In order to do that, let's create them. So I go right now, window.addEventListener, and this is where we're going to generate the codes. So what we need to establish first is the key down. We need to establish what it's going to do is this dot down, and then we go this dot down, bind this. We're passing the this value to it. Now, the next one for up, what we need to establish is key up, and then we need to establish this dot up. So let's modify it. We go this dot up, bind, and we pass the value this. Everything else is exactly the same. These are the functions of generating the events. We're listening for these events. If we're actually clicking down, we're going down. Okay? So the key down, we're going to generate this call for this function. If we're actually clicking on up, it's going to go to this function, which is for the function up, passing the parameter which we have listened for, which is this in this event listening window. Okay, so let's see what's missing now. What we need to do is we need to export this class so it can be called. Well, actually, it's actually very easy to do. In JavaScript, all we need to do is we establish const movements equals new, and then we need to determine key movements. There we go. So we need to do an export default movements. Okay. This export is necessary so that the user, whenever they do the call out from the index file, they'll be able to get this class. We need to have access to it. So let's go take care of that right now and go to the index file to establish the call to this class from the index file. So let's go to index.js, and the first thing we need to do is establish that we are importing it. Let's import movements from the movements.js. So you see right now, this file, the movements.js, is where we have established all of these. So the class is in the movements.js file. That's where we did all of our class. Okay. And now we're importing it into the index.js. Now that we're index.js, let's make the required calls from the animate function. So here we go. Let's establish the code right now. We're going to go into function animate, and in here, we're going to add, let me first establish what we're going to do. The first movement we're going to do is movement to the left. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to set if movements dot is pressed, because it's going to let us verify which key is actually being pressed. So if movements is pressed, this is the point where we need to define exactly what is the left key. And when we actually look at our keyboard, the number for that key is 37. So when you look at your left key in the actual keyboard, it's actually 37. So now if somebody has actually pressed the left key, what we're going to do is the camera position. And then what we're going to do is we're going to move on the x-axis a negative value of 0.05. So if somebody presses the left key on the keyboard, which is 37, what we're doing is we're moving the camera negative 0.05 to the left, okay? So we're going to do the same thing with the other movements. So let's start defining those right now. If actually we are defining moving up, so upward movement, let's first comment it so we know exactly what we're doing. And we're just going to copy here. In this case, if we actually point upward in our keyboard, it's actually number 38. And the values that we're going to pass are the following. So in the camera position, X is going to be increasing 0.5, and Y, because we're moving up, is actually also going to be increasing by 0.5. Those are the values we're passing. So let's go now and we're going to move to the right. So what we're going to do is we're going to change, if the movement is to the right, let me post that here, movement to the right. Let me make that modification right now. And the value for that is actually number 39. So the right key is actually 39. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to move to the right. So we go X, moving to the 0.5. And now let's move down. So let's copy here. Let's paste it on the bottom. We go downward movement. And I'm going to make that modification right now. Let me first specifically here, downward movement. And then now the key for that one is going to be 40. So let's making the modifications. We're going down. So it's negative X, we're going down. Negative Y is also down. And now all that's really missing is we need to make some modifications on the various objects that we have right now that we've modified. And what we're going to do right now is let's just go ahead and establish a camera position where we're actually looking at. So camera look at, let's define that right now where the camera is looking at. What do we want the camera to look at? Well, we've already established a space, and we said here we have the value of space, and what we're going to do is we're going to pass to that value, camera look at space dot position. And at this point, let's go have some fun and take a look at what we've actually created. So we're going to go take a look at the metaverse right now and see what we've created. So if we go to our metaverse, here we are. As you can see, we have actually shifted the position of where the camera is at. We're looking at it from a different direction. So let me pop open the console and actually take a look at what happens whenever I'm actually clicking on keys. When I go to the left, you'll see on the console that I'm actually pressing the left key, which is value 37, and you'll see that it's actually changing to the left. Let's go right. You notice how everything's changing to the right. Let's go up now. So if we go up, and we'll see if we go down, everything goes down. We're in full control of what's actually moving the camera, and we're seeing in the console exactly which key codes we're actually passing for each one of these keys. So what you see, we've got the key code to down is 39. If I actually click A, you'll see that the letter A, the key code is 65. If I click on B, you'll see the key code is 66. And if you click other ones, if you click C, you get 67. So you can actually see all of these, and the different keys have different key codes. And if we continue clicking on all of them, but notice that the only ones that will actually move anything are actually 37, 38, 39, and 40, which correspond to the arrow keys. But if I change it, I could use other letters as a way to pointing up, down, left, or right. So by this point, we know how to move around using the keys, and we can move around our metaverse. As we go through the course, I'll be showing you how you can also do it using your mouse, and it's actually very easy to do.